Hello and welcome to Cartoon Cosmonauts, a podcast all about animated short films and their creators. Each episode features a new guest, giving us the lowdown on their approach to making animation. I'm your host, Joseph Orr, and a quick reminder that this podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms as well as on YouTube as a video interview. So, on this episode, I'm very pleased to welcome special guest Liam Fahy. Liam is the animator, writer, and director of two fantastic award-winning shorts, Morning Murder and How to Rob a Witch. Today's short film that we'll be focusing on is How to Rob a Witch. It's a beautiful 2D animation that centers around two characters as they attempt to, yes, you guessed it, rob a witch. If you haven't seen it, I've included a link below so you can watch it first and then follow along as we discuss. Liam shares some really great insights here about his college course, his writing process, and how the film evolved from its very different initial concept. So, let's get started. So, hi Liam, and thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm good, Joseph. Thank you for having me on.
Whereabouts are you kind of dialing in or calling in from at the moment?
I am currently dialing in from Rathmines in Dublin. I've just moved back up from County Clare, where I'm from originally, and where I've been locked down for the most part
past
of the pandemic.
Yes, like most of us. It's funny, we could have almost done this in person because I'm just down the road, but
completely, yeah, exactly. God, it would have been a great excuse. So I'm looking for any excuse now to try out any of the cafes here while we can.
Yeah,
relatively
little window.
Safe enough. Yeah. But no, I've crawled my way back to the Pale. Again, pretty much just for a change of scene. I'm working remotely at the moment, so which is great. I could work from anywhere, but thought I had a friend anyway who needed a place, who was looking for a housemate, and I was like, I just needed to change the scene. There's already so much clear countryside I could take.
I think that's the thing at the moment, isn't it? It's just finding little pockets of places, freshen things up. Exactly. And I suppose just to jump right in when we have you on the show, can you talk a little bit about, I suppose, how you got into animation? Like, is it something that you were kind of obsessed with as a kid, or did it develop quite later?
My earliest memory of watching media is watching Pokemon. On TV at home. And I believe, like, again, memories are a fickle thing, so I have it in my head convinced that is my earliest memory of it. I think it seems true anyway, because just from my earliest memory of just watching TV, it was cartoons all the time.
Okay, and specifically Pokemon. I mean, what a phenomenon that was.
What a bad foot to start. I was doomed from the start, because that got me straight into video games then, and video games were a huge part of.
I was just going to say, like, didn't that launch, like, everything I remember about Pokemon? I was obsessed with it. I remember, like, there's the song, there's the Game Boy, there was even cards.
There was no escape.
If you
surrounding.
Yeah, and if you had all facets of them, that was just your whole financial pocket money thing just absorbed for years.
Just gone.
I even think I had like a novel or a book. I think there was books of it.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I was that.
Yes, no, I remember them. They would always be in the library. Oh my God, it's Pokemon, but it's in the library. Books are cool.
It wasn't nearly as exciting. I think you were just so hungry for more episodes or more like, expansions of the game. You're like, read the books. And sadly, it wasn't as fun as the TV show.
No, that never was. But even mentioning the books, my first ever manga, as it were. Geez, what am I saying? My first ever manga that I ever owned came as a freebie from like a video game magazine I got for Christmas. And it was Christmas 2006. Because it was the 10th anniversary for Pokemon, so they actually had like a little Pokemon manga with it,
cool.
based off the mystery dungeon Pokemon games. And I just remember loving it. I absolutely loved it. I read that thing back to front so many times. And I only discovered years later, when I actually started to get into manga properly, that manga is read from, we read from left to right. Manga is read
whereas
from
it's
right to left.
And it's almost like back to front, isn't it?
It's back to front. It's just reverse. Yeah, exactly. Perspective. Like,
reverse is a much better phrase than saying backwards.
Exactly. Careful, you'll get cancelled on Twitter. But whoever put together this little manga, anyway, this paperback version of it, hadn't had printed it from left to right, even though the panels were meant to be read from right to left.
Oh,
and I
God,
remember
that's
reading
confusing.
it as, even though, this could have cured me off manga, because I could have read it as like, this makes no sense. But I remember reading it both ways just to try and figure out. I just remember it was almost like a puzzle. I eventually figured it out. Like, wait a second, I should read this panel first, even though I was turning the pages from left to right, and it was from right to left. Oh, nightmare.
It's like a precursor to all the interactive video games. Like, you can read it both ways. Like,
read it both ways. Come on, come up with your own story. And maybe that's what got me into storyboarding. The idea
who
of
knows?
storyboarding
It's
initially.
like I have to put some shape on this. Yeah, Jesus.
Exactly. Yeah. But that manga definitely did spark my love for black and white design. That's also probably why I gravitated towards storyboarding as well. I love designing and drawing in grayscale. I'm not a big color man. I felt like I was traumatized with color as a child, submitting to because my memory of in primary school, whenever we had a drawing competition, I would always love coming up with the design of whatever was the poster of the scene. I'd love coming up with the design bit, and I'd spent so long meticulously doing that it was always like, oh geez, kids, you gotta submit now in the next 10 minutes. Liam, you haven't even started coloring. And I was like, oh God, where are my Crayolas? And I would start furiously coloring in. And I just remember hating coloring as a result, because I just associated it with stress.
This is the worst part of it. It's like, I shoot everything through a black and white.
The least fun part of the process. So that's what I always say is like, that's why I love black and white, because I always associate coloring with that stress.
And I think it's very interesting you say that, because there is, like, it's nice to hear you say it from a design point of view, because the way sometimes black and white is seen as like a paper over the cracks, like someone going, oh, why don't we put it in black and white? Like, maybe that will look better. I like that you're coming at it from the point of view of like, you're just focused on, not necessarily the silhouettes, but the design to you, like that.
Yes.
That's just more important. And then the colors kind of come after. So I think that's
very much. It's like, and that's why I remember coming around to that idea even more as a teen, because I was always kicking myself. I'm like, oh geez, I should really crack down on color theory and really try and learn it a bit more. But then I started to realize that one of my favorite pieces of media, the Scott Pilgrim comics, were originally done in black and white.
Yeah.
And even though they were black and white, it did not detract from at all, I felt, from the story. Now, they didn't release the color version down the line.
Yeah.
And they look amazing. The guy who got to that did an amazing job. I collected them all.
Oh, wow. Because I came to them late. I was a movie first. And then I think a friend bought me the volume 1 and I remember first seeing it in black and white, being like, oh, because the film is so bright and stylized that I was like, oh, I wonder if this will. But it's crazy how like true the film is to the book. Like, there's the dialogue's like lifted off it. But you're right. I don't even remember until you said it there that it was in black and white. Like, to me, I'm more fixated on the story, and the characters are quite unique. How they're designed and stuff. I don't think of the color or lack of.
Yeah, and that's why I think is also like why I've had such a love affair with manga throughout my teens into early adulthood now, is that it's just like manga is all black and white, just the way the speed they have to produce it, like they don't have time to color it, but they use that, I feel like, to their advantage a lot. And I've just really fallen in love with it, and I love my goal. The part of the black and white design that I love the most is trying to get a balance of the black and the white values, the lights and the darks, so that it feels complete and it doesn't feel like it's wanting color. Because the thing I dread the most is that my black and white design looks like a coloring.
It's missing.
And it feels lacking then. But I love that challenge of trying to hit that balance, and I find it really satisfying and really calming to look at black and white.
No, that's amazing. And is that something that, like, are you like, were you studying this? Like, is this something you done in college, or was this even before that, where you're kind of like, looking at drawings, just absorbing thing, or are you trying to like learn this, like take courses or stuff like that?
No, it was just kind of active osmosis.
Okay, just absorbing it and taking
pretty
it
much
in.
just absorbing it. And I find that has happened a lot, and throughout my artistic development, is that I found myself in college often looking back as to like, well, why do I like these designs, or why do that? And then I'll come up with this kind of narrative that kind of say, oh yeah, that must be why, because I really like this.
It is
really
hard to link it sometimes, isn't it? And
yes,
I
it
always
can
feel
be.
like a cruel torturer sometimes when it's like, where did that design come from? And you're
Yeah.
like,
What
God,
scared me so much that I draw like this now, or I create like this?
your drawings
Yeah.
have a terrifying
How
dimension.
did I get
How
here?
twisted, yeah. And I suppose that leads me nicely on to because I know we're here today to talk about your what was your grad film, How to Rob a Witch, and just kind of pairing it back, because I often ask people, did they study animation? And the fact that you have a grad film tells me that you did. Can you talk to me a little bit about your course and what college you went to?
Yes, so I went to IDT in Dunleary, the National Film School at IDT Dunleary. Even though it's funny, the animation department wasn't actually in the film school part. We were kind of like,
separate.
No one wanted us. The art department didn't really want us, and then the film schools didn't want us. So
I love that, like the National Film School. It's like, oh, and those guys at the back.
Yeah, and those guys
in
are
the
there.
shed.
I mean, like so much to the point that even for our grad shows, like the film students would get like a specific room to turn into a theater so that people could sit down and have a proper cinematic experience watching
nice.
their grad films. Whereas we had to turn the studio, which was this big echoey dormitory corridor, of a place
into like a
little studio. So it was just a corridor. So people would be wandering in and out through the whole grad show, talking away, and your film would be playing on a rickety old projector
I love that.
screen.
It's like, I'm sure they'd call that ambience. They're like,
yes.
You're
like, oh, it adds the background, the white noise. It adds something. Yeah. You can't hear the poor sound design now. It's great.
It all just comes together. And how many years was that course?
That was it's a 4-year course.
4-year course. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I did a PLC course to do a portfolio the year before. So I like to think that my art college has been 5 years in a way.
Oh wow, that's interesting, because I was actually going to ask, because I know I remember actually applying to IDT. I studied film in DIT, but I remember, as you do, you apply to a couple of places, and I know IDT was one of the few places that required a portfolio. The DIT course that I done was more kind of half theory, half practical. But I remember the portfolio process was quite, rigorous. I think when I done it, it was like, 600 for your leaving and 600 for the portfolio. Yes. So they were like on par.
Yeah, exactly.
And did was that course that you done before and specifically like to develop that portfolio?
No, very much so.
Okay.
Like how I found out about PLC courses was from one of the IAGT open days. And like I knew I wanted to go to IDT specifically as well because I knew animation was what I wanted to do, because I went to the animation talk 3 times on that open day.
Oh wow! Okay,
it impressed me. I fell in love with it that much, and I hear that from a lot of students that like they just like they know how to do an open day.
Okay, wow. Obviously, yeah, it's like a ringmaster. They're paying someone the big bucks to like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I remember I was at one of those talks. They mentioned PLC courses that you can do this 1-year course in a college of further education to focus on your portfolio, and you can submit then. And I was like, that's brilliant, because I am terrible at juggling multiple things. And my God, the Leaving Cert has enough going on that I knew that, if I did try to do the portfolio at the same time, which I was trying to do up to then, like in 5th year, I was like, I'm going to run myself into the ground.
I always thought that was a bit cruel, that like, and I know I think most places now do require a portfolio because they want to see some work, and animation is quite highly sought after. I know there's more courses now, but I always thought it was quite cruel that, your Leaving Cert, like you said, takes up your entire life for your 6th year. The fact that you have an equally, pointed thing to also do on the side, as if like, I just do that an hour or two.
I just whatever. Which some people do, and I can't get over it. Like the gods truly walk among us. Is what I think whenever I hear someone saying, I did my portfolio leaves. It's like, what the heck? But I knew myself, like I wanted to knuckle down and do good at the Leaving Cert, so I never had to do the damn thing again.
Put it behind you.
Exactly. And then just to go all in then in the PLC course. And the advice from the open day was like, someone asked like, what would you recommend is the best PLC course to do if you want to get into animation? And remember the lecturer at the time, he said whatever your local one is really the best one. It's not even so much about the quality of the course, it's about what you do with that time, really.
Yes.
Like the onus is on you, really.
Yeah.
So I did mine in Limerick, and the Limerick College of Further Education. And it was actually there that I met a few others that were also gunning for animation.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
As well. So we really kind of like bonded together and really just went all in and really encouraged each other. So that really, really helped. I'm trying to remember what my original point was.
No, but I think it's great because you've almost kind of preempted the question beforehand with the portfolio. I think like was going to be one of my big things, just about did you take the time, but the fact that did you really feel the benefit of that year, like taking that out to focus on the portfolio?
I'm very confident that I would never have gotten into IDT if I tried to do a portfolio. Having that extra bit of time, that extra chunk of a year, to also really focus on it just really helped me improve anyway. And yeah, because I mean, like, and I'll say this to all, to anyone who is thinking about going to art colleges, that like, because some people go like, oh, I just want to go straight in, I don't want to do like another like year or something. Like, all
they feel like it's a waste of time. All
my friends are going to college, I don't want to go to a college for education, and you're going to understand it. But honestly, like, I gained so much in that year. I gained so much experience because it's like a perfect transition year between secondary school and college. And plus, the best thing about it as well is that it's a great like tester as well. You can really test, see like, well, actually, do I enjoy designing? Do I even enjoy? Well, my course, the PLC course I applied to, kind of lied to us going in. Because I applied for a PLC course that was advertised as animation and illustration portfolio course. I was like, that's fantastic.
That's it. That's the one I'm doing.
That's the one for me. But I went in, did the interview, and the interview went really well. And he said, no, no, we love you. I was like, we love to have you. We have some bad news. We actually aren't running that course. But we'll put you into the graphic design portfolio course instead. And I was like, well,
really?
Okay.
Jeez, that's and was that just like a lack of numbers, or were they just like
that's what they said. They said it was lack of numbers, but we quickly found out after when we started, because we all asked around like did anyone else apply for the animation one? And we all put our hands up. So we were like, oh, they didn't have it was like a trap.
I was gonna say here's a bit of cheese. Hey, exactly, because
want this. You're like, they knew because the demand for animation, particularly in IDT, is really high. So I say like, and because I think around that time a animation course had been just set up in the Limerick School of Art and Design, which the Limerick College of Further Education course is partnered with in a way. So they probably just wanted to try and catch us really unsuspecting Western
that dodgy guy who pops up in every movie where he opens his coat. He's like, hey, you looking for a portfolio course? He's like, come on this way.
We're the one. Got him. Get the van.
And then he's in here.
Exactly.
Like, sure, throw him some graphic design. Same thing.
Yeah. But to be honest with you, like, even though the course was graphic design, like, we did a bit of everything. We did a bit of ceramics, did a bit of print, did a bit of digital stuff. And in fairness to them, when we did say to them, like, oh, a lot of us do want to apply to IDT, and one of IDT's main requirements in their portfolio is you have 2 storyboard examples. They were like, okay, we'll make one of the briefs then that you get to do. You do a storyboard.
Oh, brilliant! So they accommodated that.
So they did actually accommodate.
Okay.
Like, I did really, even though they technically trapped me in the college. I did really enjoying my time there.
They were nice captors.
They were nice. Yeah,
they looked after me.
What's that called again?
That's Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm. That's it. I can never remember it. Stockholm syndrome. They got me. Good.
And can I ask, like, as you're prepping for this, the portfolio to kind of go into animation, did you have, the way sometimes every kind of like film and animation have a lot of similarities in terms of like jobs and roles and stuff, and obviously there's a lot to do with animation, it's quite different. Did you have a specific role in your mind going in, like, I'm going to be a director, or I'm going to be a compositor or something like that? Like, did you have something in your head going in that you're like, this is what I want to do?
Storyboarding. I always had storyboarding at the forefront of my head, and you could probably almost even half guess that from like all I was saying before about my love of black and white. And like, as soon as I found out or discovered that I was into film and I loved animation, I started to look into, well, what is the process behind, how do one of these things get made? And once I discovered that storyboarding was a thing, I just really fell in love with it, because again, you put a storyboard and manga beside each other, you'll see kind of like similarities. It's comics, it's panels, it's and I love, and again, storytelling. I really do enjoy like the process of communicating and storytelling.
Yeah.
So I knew going in.
Oh, sorry, no, you go on.
Oh, yeah. So I knew going in that that storyboarding was what I was interested in.
Okay,
But again,
perfect.
I was still quite open to learning anything,
Yeah,
really.
but that was your kind of like so your road in,
Mm,
so to speak. Because I think one of the things I picked up quite late from storyboarding, because you kind of look at animation as kind of like, from the outside looking in, you're only seeing the finished product. So you're seeing a
yes.
finished movie, and you're seeing some sketches in a script, voice actors. Then, oh, there it is. But
Mm,
I didn't realize until quite late how like creative storyboarding is in that department. Like
yeah.
almost possibly one of the most creative, because a lot of, especially with the more computer driven animation, the animation side of things, you have your riggers who set up
Mm,
the skeletons, and then the animators. There's not as much creativity as I initially thought when I was on the outside looking
mm.
in. Whereas with storyboarding, taking a script, you're almost deciding like camera angles,
Completely, yeah.
positioning shots, and sometimes even like what the character can look like, in earlier
Exactly.
sketches.
What they're
So
exactly doing in the scene, like it'll be written in the script, sure, but yeah, but it's the actual it's the first visual pass of the
yeah, you
film.
make up the details. And I thought, geez, that's crazy. That is so much creative power. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And and I always love this quote. I think it's from the guy who did Gumball. I think I saw it on his Instagram. Um, that and he loves like doing like posting like little like storyboards he does. But I remember reading one of the captions saying like, like storyboarding is the fun bit and productions are where stories go to die. something I'm paraphrasing, but that totally captures like there is such like a
Yeah,
fun fluid element to
absolutely.
storyboarding because yeah, you have that flexibility and yeah, getting that first touch on it's the found. I like to think of it okay, well, the script is of course the story, that's like the narrative foundation, but the storyboard is like the first visual layer of the visual foundation.
Yeah. And
And
like
I
me personally, I always like when I'm writing a script, I'm picturing things in my head, and the script is almost like I'm like, come on, I want to get through this so I can get to the visual
yes,
side. Because you're like,
yeah,
okay, I
yeah,
just need to put down a roadmap, even if it's like a lot of my scripts
even
when
if
I
it's
show
bullet
them to people.
points.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people
I've
kind
never
of
actually
go, I'm
done
not really
full
sure.
scripts for any of my films. They've all
Have you
been
not?
bullet point scripts.
Oh wow.
Like literally just like this happens, then this happens, and this happens. Of course, all my stuff doesn't really deal with what that I've done so far. It doesn't deal with dialogue so much, so that
Okay.
isn't as
But
important.
no, that's
So I've been able
interesting.
to get
So
away
is
with that.
yours more of like a shot list
Effectively, yeah.
rather
You know
than
what? It
like
is. It is pretty much a pared down shot list. Just like
brilliant?
down, and then I'll thumbnail from that, and
Get
away
into
I'll go with
like,
it.
because
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you the storyboard, and I think that's what I've loved, like from doing this podcast, from talking to different people. That's what I love about animation, that there is no like, especially on like that kind of early stage like development, where you're like, let's say amateur, hobbyist, semi-pro, you're somewhere in between
Mm,
there, that there is no like, oh, you have to write a script. Like you can't start a thing until you write a script. We're like, well, I have it in my head,
yeah,
so I'm going to do it as
exactly.
bullet points. And you're like, that's fine. There
Yeah,
is no like, you
it
must do
evidently
this.
works.
Yeah, that's the
Like
thing.
people
And I
have gotten
love
away with it. Yeah.
different people's kind of processes to get there.
Oh,
It's
completely.
great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, if you ever get a chance to look up an absolutely mad film when it comes to like process and what you can get away with, look up The Girl with No Hands. It's
Girl with no
by
hands.
this
No.
I can't even, you'll discover I'm terrible when it comes to
Yeah.
remembering names. But I saw it down in the Dingle Film Festival, Animation Festival, one year. And the guy was there who did it. He's from France, and I
Cool.
remember him saying it's this beautiful film where it's like the characters like almost breathe, like the line art is super like fluid, and the characters nearly breathe.
Oh
And
wow.
so you're watching like, this is amazing. Like, how was this? I wonder what his process was. And he got up afterwards, and he said that he only got to actually line test. He did it all on paper. He did it all traditionally. And he said
Wow.
he only got a chance to actually line test throughout the whole film. There's a full length feature, animated feature. He said he only got to line test it like around 6 times, I think, for the whole production. He was like, as long as it was like, I only got to really check to see, was it working? Was the animation working those few
Jeez.
times? So
I
he was
love
just
how
going through.
offhand.
So yeah, I'm telling you, the gods, they live among us and they're in France.
Yeah. It is. It's very it's
Mm.
equally like awe-inspiring and also like jealous,
Oh,
like,
very much. It's like,
spiteful, when you're like,
wow. Oh my
you
God.
bastard. Yeah, look at that. It's like able to just like, oh yeah, I only got to check it once, and oh, is it good? Oh, I suppose it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, and
You're like,
then the thing was that it was phenomenal. Like,
yeah,
that's the
you're
thing
like,
that
oh, that, oh
blew us
yeah,
all away. It's like,
just
oh, we
first
can't say
pass.
like, oh well, whatever, he's wrong, because it thing worked out. But yeah, but as you said, yeah, everyone's got a slightly different process and approach to coming when it comes to disease, and that's the beauty of the medium, is that, you know, chances are sometimes it just works.
Yeah, and I think it's great because you can, you know, you take the time. It's not always your first go. You know, you start with your first film, whether it's, you know, nowadays it might be with apps, it might be with like toys, cars, whatever it might be with, but you're kind of refining that process as you go, and you're picking up things. I think there's a great culture at the moment of like or a fascination with like seeing how things are made. Like there's so many videos
like
out now
Skillshare
where
and stuff like that, all
and
those
people
services.
kind of share, you know, behind the scenes stuff, and you're kind of going, "Ooh, is that how they do that?" You're like, maybe I could try that.
And you know what, it's something to be said. It's that whole thing of like the algorithm needs content, and so because our content takes such a long time to produce, to produce one piece, because the algorithm just sees a film as just, that's one piece of content, you haven't posted anything for a year. So it does kind of force anyone who is any independent animator or whatever that is trying to get a presence, whether it be on Twitter or Instagram. It's like it has forced us to kind of think like, well, what else can I show? What other content can I squeeze out of my process?
It's like a baking thing. You're like, what else can I make out of this? You're like, oh, I'm making of, and blah blah blah. And can I ask?
I found this scrunched up drawing in my pocket. I'll post that.
You can make a whole post out of that. When you were in IDT, was there one piece of animation software that you used, or did they kind of show you multiple ones, or was there one main one that you guys kind of stuck with?
Yeah, well, so for my particular year anyway, or my generation, going through IDT, TV Paint was like our main like hand-drawn animation program. Same one that Cartoon Saloon uses. So that was like our main focus, really, and like a lot of us in first year like got out to try it for the first time when we were helping out with the fourth years, because we had helped them like color in some like frames in their film or did a bit of cleanup. So that's how I got my hands in it.
And is that how the process works? Do they normally do that? They get the kind of first years to
do cleanup stuff. Although again, things could have changed a bit now in the 2 years that I've gone. But yeah, there is definitely a culture of trying to get the other years a chance to help out with the fourth years, especially on the bigger, the higher budget, maybe.
Definitely, and I think exposing you to that early is great because you get to see here's what's involved. You're like, oh wow, okay,
exactly. But that's why I got my hands in it for the first time, and I was only shown like the bare bones, like, well, this is what you need to do to clean up for my film and do the colors. I was like, okay, great. It was only just a couple of shots.
But still,
exactly, it was a start. But the funny story is that and that was the TV Paint was what all was used in fourth year for our films.
For your films, okay, brilliant.
Oh, of course, the people who were doing 3D used Maya. Maya was kind of like,
but for 2D it was TV Paint. And did you find it was it easy to get used to, or was it quite like, is there a steep learning curve when you initially come on?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because it's funny. Even though, as I said, we all used it for our grad films, we were never taught it once in the college. Try and wrap your head around that.
Really?
No, we never had an official class about this is how you use TV Paint. It's just this weird anomaly. I think I heard that when I was in second year, they got someone in from Cartoon Saloon to show the third years, like, do a workshop on it, and we expected like, oh, we'll get that as well. But
get that.
So literally, how we all learned TV Paint was a mixture of just learning it from each other. Like, oh, I accidentally pressed the A button and this crazy thing happened. Completely, yeah. And if you ever do get a chance to open that program, draw something and hit the A button, and you'll be quite surprised as to what happened. It really scared me the first time I was like, I won't spoil it.
Okay, I look forward to that. That's crazy. Yeah. So they never. That seems like a serious.
They never did. What they did was they showed us, they taught us Flash or Adobe Animate. I think it rebranded while we were actually going through it to Adobe Animate. And that's the vector-based animation program. So it's all like about rigging and like tweening and stuff like that. And I actually our year did not really take to Flash very well. Was it taught that I think I think it could have been taught better. The lecturers did the best they could.
And it was still, I suppose, at that stage when it was crossing over, that program was still in its infancy, because obviously now it's everywhere. You know what? Anytime I'm online, I'm getting advertisements like, "Oh, use this. You know, try this out for a month." They've obviously refined it, and they've kind of like
they've definitely polished it down. They've definitely polished it down, and it's definitely a much nicer program to use in many ways. But like for so many years, Flash was the industry standard. Yeah. And we had the unfortunate thing of experiencing, we were being taught it, but then hearing then in the subsequent years, Toon Boom was coming in as the industry standard. So when we graduated, Toon Boom was now the industry standard for a lot of places, a lot of the big places. And we had to come out and be like, oh, we were never shown to. We have to look up. We have to go do courses in Toon Boom now if we want to have a chance at.
That's the worst, isn't it? When you come out and you're like,
oh no, the industry's moved on. But like that's like
I had a nice time.
The tragedy of college and college experiences.
Because I felt a similar way with Final Cut Pro, because that's what I learned in college, and now it seems like 90% of the editing jobs out there are Adobe because of the Premiere, to Premiere and Photoshop. Whereas Final Cut, even though I love it as an editing software, it doesn't have the kind of Photoshop or After Effects.
The interconnectivity. Like those programs speak to each other solidly enough.
And like Photoshop's become a verb almost. People are like, "Oh, did you Photoshop that?" I'm like, "Well, I didn't use Photoshop, but exactly, I did. I know what you mean."
Completely. It's like I've rarely heard Photoshop actually referred to editing photos anymore.
It's just like an editing term now. And do you still use TV Paint, or have you, like, I know you were saying you've kind of dabbled in Adobe now as well, or do you have a preferred software at the moment, or what would that be?
TV Paint would still be the one I would go to if I was doing hand-drawn animation.
Okay, cool.
I mean, like, it's really got a feel for it. After 5 years of using it, of trying to wrap my head around it, and I learned so much in the final 4 months. I learned more in the last 4 months of fourth year about TV Paint than I did in the whole years, funnily enough.
Okay, wow.
Just from all of us pooling our heads together, like, oh, did you realize you can do this? Oh my God, I didn't know that.
That is amazing, that kind of shared learning experience, exactly like that, where you're just kind of sharing tips and stuff.
Probably the best thing you'll get out of college is just learning from the other people. That's what I find. You'll learn a bit from the lecturers, all right. They'll do their damnedest, fair play to them. But like, they can only give you so much. They can only really give you an introduction, I find, in many respects.
And I think a lot of things.
Question, TV Paint would be my go-to for hand-drawn. Flash, I used Flash for my first like personal film, Morning Murder, and I was one of the only people in our year that actually didn't mind using Flash too much. Like it only started making sense to me when I started thinking of it in terms of paper cutout animation.
And I think Morning Murder has a very
exactly. It's got that very like silhouette, flat, like clear shapes. It could have almost been made in paper cutout stop motion animation, where all the characters are just different pieces. But once I started thinking about Flash in terms of like it's in those paper cutout terms of like I have all the different heads of the character, all the different hand shapes. I have them all stored in like different digital envelopes, and I'm just calling them out on which frames that I need them. I'm just swapping them in and out.
Okay, brilliant.
That's when it really started to click for me, and I actually didn't mind using it. Also, when I finally figured out that you shouldn't tween everything. I have very bad memories of being in class and being told by the lecturer, you need to tween this, tween that, tween the head moving up here, and we would all end up with just this. Our poor characters would just be this. They'd be like, moving across the screen in this mangled mess. Their legs switching, like popping out their sockets, switching down to their ankles, and then we were told, then you need to use this thing called shape hints to remind the leg that this is the top and this is the bottom. Then you'd use the shape hints, and then that wouldn't work. It would actually make it worse. So I mean,
if you're going for that effect,
unless you wanted it, if you wanted to make a real, what are they called? Not a Heisenberg monster, whatever.
I know
those like amalgamation characters. That Flash is the program for you.
Yeah, if you're going for that, that's
tweens specifically. But when I figured out that, time and a place to use a tween. Because I think that's what drove us mental was.
And I think that's great that you mentioned that. Like, I think that's such an interesting point in terms of using the software you know, like when you have an idea in mind, as in obviously you need a first introduction to it, but I think if you can use the software like purely as a tool, as in like, oh, this film is more silhouette
is
driven,
more suited, exactly,
this suits this, like, not, you don't have to treat a piece of software like, oh, I'll make everything on this, because they have different strengths. And
exactly.
I suppose
It's
that
another
leads
tool,
me,
as you said, it's another tool in your toolbox.
another tool, exactly. That leads me kind of nicely onto sort of the second section of the podcast, which is your film How to Rob a Witch. And I think it's great just the kind of the introduction you've laid down there, kind of coming up through, you know, your college and the fact that it's your grad film. But can I ask, where did the idea for that film come from?
Yes. Well, the idea was kind of, well, what locked in the kind of the final version of the film was kind of was three separate events, three things that happened. The first one was it was at the end of second year, and I was just I was moving back home to Clare, but my parents had come up anyway to help me move down, and we went to the market in Dunleary, the Sunday market, and there's these two lovely fountains in the park at either end. So we were just sitting around then, like enjoying the good weather, and these two boys, they must have been around maybe 8 or 7. They came along anyway, and they hopped into the fountain while all of us were just sitting around. And then we see these two boys, they hop into the fountain, and then they scoop up all the coins that people had thrown in as wishes. They scooped up all those coppers and they stuffed these soggy coppers into their pockets, and then they went off and bought burgers in like the nearest stand. And I just remember sitting there flabbergasted. Like, oh my god, that's like, I'm like,
it's cheeky, it's ballsy.
It's cheeky, but it's like, I mean, like, is there a law telling against it? None of us. So, like, what was stopping any of us from doing it? Only maybe our morals, our beliefs. Like, those are wishes. They're morals. Sacred. Yeah, exactly.
Not that I want to call those children evil, but
no, not at all. I call them hungry, probably.
Yeah, entrepreneurial. I think that's
entrepreneurial. You know what? That's the key.
We saw an opportunity, and we
took it. Fair play to them. They'll be running Google before we know it. But so that was like the first thing I remember. Like, that really stuck with me. So I moved home anyway, and my grandfather had passed away. I think it was passed away during my leaving cert, so a few years before. So we were still in the process of sorting through all the stuff in his house. Okay. Which if anyone has gone through this, it can be a lot. It can be a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But we found his stash of copper coins, like pennies and cents and stuff like that, and old Irish punts as well. We found it like his collection of them anyway. And my mom said, "Oh, you can take that. That's your inheritance, I suppose." I was like, "Oh, great, thanks, ma'am, and granddad, I suppose." But then it kind of hit me. Then I was like, "Oh my god, these are the same coins that the boys in Dunleary took out of the fountain."
Wow.
So at that kind of, I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting kind of connection." And then I started thinking of because my grandmother was, my nana was quite ill, was getting ill at the time, and she'd been living like independently on her own in the Clare countryside for as long as I could remember. And she, and like, how old she? I think she lived till she was 90. So she was a strong, independent woman. Like,
yeah, and that's a good age too. Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very. We'd be doing all pretty well if we got that far. Jeez. But she didn't want to go into a nursing home because she felt like, like that's her kind of giving up her independence. So that's giving up her power. Her independence meant like, okay, you put me in there, I'm senile. If I'm here and I'm still able to live on my own, I'm still in control. And that's my power.
Yeah.
So I remember like that being kind of an issue as well at the time. We're trying to get her into the home for her own sake as well, because a few years back as well, our house had been robbed, just broken into. I remember being like, I was actually very young at the time, but I remember being kind of fascinated in a way, coming in and seeing all the presses open. Like, it really left an impression.
Yeah, I suppose something like that does. You know what I mean? Whether you think it or not at the time.
Exactly, yeah. And I remember they didn't get a chance to steal much. We had gone up to Mass at the time. I was dragged off to Mass. but they had actually only managed to steal like some of my nana's money that had been just in our house. And, like, she had a purse or something. So that paired with trying to get Nana into the home and just being worried about how vulnerable she was living on her own, that paired with the copper coins from my granddad, and then the boys stealing the coins from the fountain, where all that was really stopping them was just the water,
yeah,
and their morals.
Bit of societal pressure is in
a
there.
Bit of societal pressure, maybe, but to them, who gives a heck? I got to get burgers. But those disparate things all kind of came together in my head, and that was kind of like the eureka moment of like, oh, like the elderly are quite vulnerable, and like that was, damn, now I'm tripping all my words, edit this bit out. But like they all came together as that kind of like eureka moment.
Culminated,
like,
kind of.
They culminated together into this like idea of like, there isn't much actually stopping anyone if they put their minds to busting into any old folk pensioner in the middle of the countryside and steal their stuff. They'll probably put up as much resistance as water in a funny way.
Yeah.
If your morals are that way in tuned, it's free money in many respects. And sad but true, it happens. It happens a lot.
Wow, geez, I never expected that kind of
that weird
that kind of
journey.
No, it's a crazy but I think that's what I love, about hearing these stories. It's not just I saw a poster one day and I said, wouldn't that be fun? Like, this is obviously kind of like fed into it all in quite a real way.
Yeah, but that's what locked it into like the finished like concept version. I went through obviously very different versions of that.
But that was it at its raw kind of.
That was at its raw. That's what gave me kind of my core focus for the film. And I'm a big fan of Brian Mcdonald. He didn't have a farm, in case you wonder. But he's this American writer. And he has this podcast on YouTube called You Are a Storyteller, where he talks about his writing processes and his experiences. And he interviews other like big wigs from the industry, like Frank Oz, the Muppeteer.
Yeah, wow.
He does that in one episode as well. But I love listening to his podcast because he's a really big fan of this idea of like, the theme of your film. Well, he doesn't even call it a theme, he calls it the armature. Because if you say theme to several different people, they'll give you several different definitions.
And sometimes it can be very loose and vague.
Very loose. I mean, theme. What do you mean?
Did I have a theme going in? Sometimes a theme is something someone says to you. Oh, I love the theme of loneliness, and you're like, yes, go on.
Yes, indeed, yes, that was my intent. Yeah,
I'm gonna repeat that for the loftier film festival.
Yes.
Tell me why you thought it was lonely.
That's one for the back of the box, maybe. Yeah. But he uses the word armature, which is like, as you might probably know from
stop motion. Yeah.
It's like the core of the character. It's the metal spine that you dress everything else on.
Oh wow, that's a cool analogy. I like that.
But he loves, like, what his process is that he can't start writing unless he has figured out what he wants to say. Like, that's his definition of theme. It's what's the core message, what's the core moral, I suppose. Everyone kind of always does a slight eye roll with their morals and stories.
It's true,
but I think he has a very interesting perspective on that. Like, stories are about conveying some sort of moral, even if your intention isn't to say a particular thing with your film or to show a specific moral.
Even if that's just something you're keeping, you know what I mean, that people can maybe scratch at the surface.
And get
but they don't have to take it from
they don't initial. Exactly, they don't have to take it, but even if it is your intent to communicate a moral or not, your film will communicate something anyway.
Something
is right, something is wrong, or in between. But he like, his idea of like of finding that armature. If you find that armature, you find that core message or your core goal with your piece, that acts as your golden design compass then for all decision making.
That everything comes from
the whole piece. When it comes to the character designs, when it comes to the beats in the story, what happens, what doesn't happen, the location, the sound, the music.
That'll kind of help guide you.
Yes, and I really do agree with his point that if you want to direct, you need to have some kind of compass, because people are going to come to you like, "Whoa, should we do this? Should we do that?" And you need to have something in you. So you need to have some compass you can kind of rely on. But like, no,
yes or no,
this is the direction we should be going, because this is towards the goal. And you as the director, you're the person with the vision, so you need to kind of have that where you're steering your ship.
People need to be able to come to you. And for this film, did you get the full year to work on it? So is this something that you got all of fourth year, or was it a little bit shorter, or a little bit longer?
Well, we were super lucky that we were actually, I believe we were the first year in IDT that actually got to start our pre-production in halfway through third year.
Oh wow, cool.
So which was great because that came from feedback from a good few fourth years saying like, starting pre-production in fourth year is pretty rough going if you start in September, like
yeah. And I think it's nice then to get that time, because I always find with pre-production, that's where you need time for things to breathe.
Oh,
you know what I mean? When you're animating, it's almost a little bit more technical. It's terms of like, I need to get this character from here to there. Yeah. Whereas with the storyboarding and just the general conceptual stuff, I mean, you could spend years working on that. You know, there's multiple ways anyone could draw one character. And I think sometimes a bit of distance helps when you're able to put something down, step away from it and go. Whereas I think, if you were, coming into college September and someone was like, okay, we need your work done by Christmas, you're like, there's no time to think. And did the characters go through many variations at all, or did you have kind of a clear idea of what they kind of look like from the start?
They did go through some variation. Well, the main character, the little girl, Maeve, her name, the names are never mentioned in the piece, obviously, because it's all pantomime. But Maeve, the main character, she went through a lot of changes, because originally the original draft, because they're kind of up to no good. The two main characters, my initial designs for them was that they looked mean, like they looked like they were up to no good, like classic almost like film characters. They were always tall and small. Like Maeve was always the small one, and Martin, the brother, was always like the tall one. But their initial designs were quite kind of mean and almost thuggish looking. But then I reread one of my favorite comics called Beautiful Darkness. Well worth checking out. Could not tell you the authors for the life of me. But Beautiful Darkness has a story about these really cute characters that at the start, like the whole world starts to melt and fall apart around them, and they pull themselves out of the muck and the sludge, and they've actually ended up crawling out of the ear of this little girl who's dead in the woods. And they're tiny. They're like Lilliputians, like they're like like tiny little people. And so the story is about them trying to survive in the woods around the body of this poor little girl who's died in the woods, and it could be very cute, because the character designs are adorable. They're phenomenal.
And it's quite a dark story.
Yes, as the title suggests, as the story goes on and as the days go on, you start to realize, these characters are actually not as pure and innocent as they appear.
Okay.
Yeah, they start doing some pretty like dark stuff, and it's really unsettling. I remember just being so unsettled. I had never been as unsettled by a comic before. There's much more unsettling comics out there, obviously, but I just remember
this one struck a particular chord.
It did. It's just that contrast between the really cutesy design and then just and just the horrible acts they were committing, and the innocence at which they committed those acts as well.
And this had a kind of a real impact to you. Like, I suppose it just came at the right moment when you're kind of still in flux with the characters.
Still in flux, exactly. Because then I started realizing, like, that's because that's what I find I do a lot, is that if I do register what I'm experiencing piece of media, I'm having a reaction.
It's obviously like strong, you know what I mean?
If I do actually come out of my head for a second while I'm watching something and I go like, oh wait, I actually am, I'm about to tear up, or geez, I'm actually feeling like really pumped right now, or I'm feeling a real sense of dread, like my blood is turning cold. I really love trying to break down, okay, what about this that I'm watching now or experiencing now is making me react this way? Is it the combination of the music? Which it often is. Music can be so effective in some senses when the visuals aren't even, when the story isn't even that great. I find sometimes
it can elevate it so much.
It's like, why am I crying? I don't really like this story, but the music is really working on me. But like, I love trying to break down anyway what is getting to me or why. I did that with Beautiful Darkness. Then I was like, okay, it's definitely this contrast between the cutesy design,
the subject matter, and what the characters look like. Okay,
and it really like reinforced it. And like something that I really wanted to do then was I really wanted to take advantage of how we go into we spend in short films. One of the beautiful things about the medium is that we get to see such short snippets of the characters' lives. We spend such little time with them. We don't get to know them for so long. But we oftentimes, I think most of us, we want to believe in the perspective we're being shown of the main character that we're introduced to at the start of a film. We want to root for them in a way. We're seeing things from their perspective. And it's only when a character really, and of course we judge things about, like, you know, oh, are they mean looking? Are they nice looking? Like we'll go in with certain prejudices, that have been built into us just from media. But it's only, but like, again, I don't know where this old age adage comes from. Maybe it's a Aesop fable, but it's actions that define a character, not their shell, essentially.
That's very true. Absolutely.
So I really wanted to try and tap into that, and tap into like the audience's
playing around with this
assumptions. Exactly, because I felt because being betrayed, because that's what I felt when I was reading Beautiful Dark. I felt I was being betrayed by these cutesy characters. I was won over initially, but then it was like it's like you become friends with someone, but then suddenly after a few weeks of knowing them, you start noticing that they enjoy cutting rats' tails off and hanging them in their room.
Because it's interesting you say that. How was I blind this? Because it's only doing this podcast, I often like to watch, you know, these films a few times, you know, coming up with the questions and stuff. And it's only towards the last few times of watching it that I really started to question, you know, you hear the word witch, and there's a certain layer of assumption of, you know, evil, wrongdoing. And it was only when I watched it, because, you know, for anyone who hasn't seen it, and I'd encourage you to, I'm going to link it in underneath to watch it before we get on to too much, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. So stop now if you haven't, and watch it. But for the people who have seen it, I think like it's quite a dark ending. And when I'm looking at the evidence of, you know, how evil this, you know, witch is, kind of like, oh, there's not a huge amount in there to be like, oh, she deserved what she got. You're kind of like, who are the good guys there? And was that a deliberate choice? Was that kind of like something you're like,
totally, that was my ultimate goal with this, for the experience I wanted the audience to go through, was that at the start they made the assumption of like, these are the protagonists, the brother and sister going to rob the witch. And the title as well is all designed for that as well. How to rob a witch. That sounds like a great piece of advice. I want to learn how to rob a witch. Witches suck. That you assume that they are the protagonists, but then at the midpoint there's that flip, and then you start to realize, oh shoot, they're actually more the antagonists. And the witch is actually more the protagonist. Like nothing changes for them really. You discover at the end of the film that they've done this before. This isn't their first rodeo. In a way. So nothing changes for them. This is just another gig, almost, in a way. Or just
here we are, 7 o'clock, rock
7 o'clock, whatever. Eat my sandwich. It's all good. But it's the witch that everything changes for. Irrevocably. I can't say that word. Whatever.
Insert correct pronunciation here. But I think, and that, like that, there's a moment towards the end where you're seeing even a picture on her wall. I remember seeing there's like, it's like her, what I would assume is maybe her grandkid or something on her knee.
Ding ding.
And you're kind of like, oh, that doesn't look like, you know, she's about to eat that kid. And the roof crumbling and the cat there, you're like, God, I actually kind of feel bad. And when you're kind of replaying in your head, you're like, what has she actually done? You know what I mean? Apart from collecting a couple of coins. So
this makes me so happy. This makes me so happy.
Hey, you got it.
I literally, like, for me, there's nothing greater than making art and then hearing someone, you know, really much tell you back exactly what you wanted to communicate. It's like, oh, I did something, okay.
And it actually worked.
But that's totally it. And everything in the witch's design in our house, like, because I knew that was my main challenge, was to try and put the audience, take that presumption of witch in people's heads.
That word just has connotations.
This villainous word that has this villainous connotation to it. Take that, and by the end of it, have them question, like, wait, was she actually all that bad?
Were we following the bad guys, or?
Yes,
know.
we are following the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I wanted that to be the shock of kind of the film, like the revelation, the big reveal moment. And that's what I was setting up for the whole time.
And
The whole
that
start
shot
half,
at the end is beautiful with the flames and walk, but it is just kind of dawning on you slowly as they're kind of walking down and up the hill towards you. You're like, are they? I mean, have they done a good thing? I suppose less witches is good, but you're like,
but then
what
you're
about
like,
her
what
was
did she
actually
do? And then again, as you said, on repeated watches, you kind of realize, oh, there's no rat tails hanging from the ceiling. There's no
that
children.
doesn't look like a victim. That looks like her grandkid.
There's no children. That's like her little wizard grandchild.
Yeah, her little wizard grandchild. I love
exactly.
that.
And I suppose someone did bring this up to me at one point. They were like, oh, but isn't she stealing the coins? And that's in the well. If you think about it, people are throwing their coins into the well. They don't care about them anymore. But in my head canon, this isn't in the film at all. So, I didn't expect anyone. No, this isn't meant to be something the audience knows.
Yeah.
It's like she's actually granting the wishes. And there was a point that I had a crossroads during pre-production. I was like, okay, I have this idea about telling the story about these two that are robbing the witch that's going down a very kind of darkish path. It will have a dark ending, and if I don't nail it properly, it'll just come off as really edgy, and I'll be bastardized from the industry forever. I don't know. Like, that was my greatest fear, because I was like, what if I can't achieve it? What if I actually can't pull it off?
Get that point across.
So I had this other idea of like, oh, I could do a really nice twee film about the process of granting a wish and following the story of a coin being dropped down the well, and then this witch, she collects up her little bits and bobs, and this is how she grants the wish.
She grants the wishes. Okay.
I was going to have it like that because my nana always had these silver mints. She forever had these silver mints. So I had this idea like the witch. She brews up like a little potion. She's able to taste what the wish is off the coin, and then she knows what to get together. So she gets bits and bobs together, and then she makes a little potion. She drinks it then, and then she eats the coin, and then she goes to sleep. And if she dreams of the wish coming true, it will come true.
Oh wow!
That was like the concept. That was like the concept for the very other route. That's the alternative universe,
or maybe a prequel.
Yeah, completely, exactly. Or I had again another lofty notion was like, oh, if I had my shit together, I could actually do like a little comic to release with like a little zine to release with the film.
I always loved them because they were like the road to, and then that film, like prequel to, or the prelude or whatever. Okay.
Over the Garden Wall did that a lot. I remember they would do Over the Garden Wall did do that. They would like show like backstory to
the comics,
the Cartoon Network. Yeah. So
that's
they would
amazing.
show like where this character actually came from.
Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting. But anyway, I went down the dark route I did, and thankfully it paid off in the end. It actually came together well enough.
I think I love hearing that as well, that you had this crossroad of ideas, because I think sometimes there's maybe a misconception that the hard part is getting that initial idea and then it's smooth sailing, whereas a lot of the time you've so many crossroads with ideas where you go, maybe I could do this, but if I do that I can't do this, and you have two kind of like half ideas where you're like, oh, which one do I go with?
Which one do I go down? Which one? Exactly. And I really and I remember actually one of the hardest parts was at the start of pre-production was trying to decide what idea do I go with, because I had a few in concept, and How to Rob a Witch was one of them in its very early stages of the idea. But I had like 5 post-it notes, like with 5 different just like buds of ideas, and I remember really struggling, like, okay, which one do I dedicate?
Which one do I go?
Year or like 2 years of my life, effectively.
And would you have someone that you would like bounce ideas off, or how do you mull that over?
How do I ideate? Like, again, our year got on really well, so we were all able to kind of bounce ideas off each other, which was great. I loved my year so much for that, and some amazingly talented people.
And do you think that's key, kind of finding people whose, like, say, opinions you trust and respect, that if you pitch an idea to and they're like, oh, you're like, okay, maybe that isn't as kind of strong as I thought? Or
especially, I think it's especially important that you find people that understand what you want to get out of your film.
Okay.
Because I feel like
what you're going for.
Yes, there's a very fine line when it comes to feedback, and again, I'm quoting Brian Mcdonald on this as well. Is that he says, if you're getting feedback on something you're making, you really only need to ask the person 2 questions. one, did they understand it, and two, how did they feel at different points?
Okay.
And then he says, anything else, any suggestions you get outside of that is pretty much fluff. It's like,
okay,
because, and his point with that, so that can come across as really like pig-headed, I suppose.
No. I understand what you mean.
Oh, cool. Because I thought the same as well. But I remember telling a few friends of it. I was like, that sounds like a real asshole thing.
No, because I think there is, and like a lot of people that that I ask for opinions on my work aren't necessarily animators or people who are making their own things. It's just for an opinion on terms of like, clarity in terms of understanding.
Completely, yes.
And a lot of the time someone, they'll read it and then I'll go, what do you think? And they're like, yeah, my always go-to thing is there anything that didn't make sense?
Yes.
Or is there a point that you felt like this is taking me out of the story?
You lost me there.
Like I'm getting bored now. And if I say something to someone, oh, did you get that this? And they're like, oh, no, I didn't get that. What? He has a gun. I'm like, okay, I haven't made that clear enough.
Yes. And you know what? Actually, my favorite thing to do, and this mightn't work for all films or films with dialogue maybe as much, but I don't know, I like trying to get the person to tell the story back to me.
Oh, cool. That's an interesting tactic. I like that.
Because
just like kind of summarize.
It's just a very nice, because then you're not leading them at all, because you can accidentally lead someone like, oh, what about this bit in the film? Did you understand what's going on here? Yes, exactly. Hold it.
I love it. Did you like the way he eventually had his dream come true? And you're like, I did like the way that happened.
Yes, you're good, and you give him a sweet. Yeah, but it can happen by accident. Yeah,
you don't mean to. I think sometimes you're so close to it, and you just not that you want someone just to say they love it, but it is a very personal thing, and you are kind of on a bit of a tender hooks when you're like, so what did you think? But I think that's a really interesting piece of advice to like ask someone to summarize it back to you, even if it's very basically, but just
and even more on that. It's also a great way to test out, like, is your story actually interesting if someone says like, oh, I saw this film and this is what happened in it.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. Because the interesting ones will stick, whereas if it's a bit bland,
and people will describe and say, oh, I saw this film and this happened, oh, it was really, you gotta go check it out.
Yeah.
I find that's also kind of an interesting gauge to try you can get as well from that.
Is there kind of like touch points where people are like, I remember, like I'm always like that with books. Sometimes I love a book and someone's like, oh, what's it about? And I can kind of remember the start and then maybe one or two key bits, but I'm like, God, where did he go in between those two bits?
Yeah, and that's like, the low point. That's the bit perhaps when you were reading the story that you were kind of like, I'm kind of just getting through this bit. They're talking a lot about war tactics now.
flipping. One of my favorite scenes in How to Rob a Witch is as Maeve, the little girl, is being lowered into the well. I love the contrast between, Martin on top, whining in bed, sunshine, just having zero risk. He's like, I'll just lower you down. You take all the risk. I hope she's getting like a 70-30 split at the very least. But can you talk a little bit about like when she gets to the bottom and the simplicity? It's such a good hook, like poking at the bricks, because at first you're not really sure what's going on. Like, can you talk about coming up with that scene and how you arrived at that?
I was right. I was trying to think as well, like, what really did kind of inspire that? What did spark that? Because I feel like almost from the first time I thought about them going down the well, it was like the most obvious thing in my head, like there's a secret keystone or something like that.
Cool.
You know what? Probably years of playing video games in The Legend of Zelda was probably enough to just lodge that idea in my head. Like there's some hidden keystone, and that's how you open a secret door.
Yeah.
But I suppose because I back home in Clare, there's like, geez, you can throw a stone and you'll nearly hit some sort of antiquity.
Okay, landmark or
exactly some kind of like ancient landmark. And when you're there, you always feel like, God, it's a really special place. It's a really ancient place. And I grew up across the road from a castle, which I really miss actually going for walks. I'm going to miss that the most when I'm Dublin is going for walks.
Yeah.
But there's like this really old like tower that's in like the corner of one of the walled gardens, and like the top of it's completely blown off, But when you can actually go into it, and if you look up, it literally is almost like being exactly in the well that's in the.
Oh wow! So you get that like completely kind of like walled in.
Yeah, and you know what? And I'll say this with a lot of the designs in the film, is that I think a lot of them did come from kind of unconscious memory of like
growing up in that
growing
kind of
up in
experience.
Clare around these antiquities. So I definitely remember at some point as a kid, I always just had like, oh, again, playing with video games. I was like, there's some. What if there was some hidden stone here that opened up? Because I always loved that idea, and you really hear that a lot, like in Irish folklore. It's like, you know, like the fairies, they're just in the field, but there's a trick to how they're hidden and stuff like that. And I always really loved that. Like, it's always a catch. They're about wood or something, but there's like some keystone or something. Like that.
No, so I love that, and even the sound design was quite nice. You know, just to kind of, and you're not really sure what's going on at first. Kind of just lowering down. You're just aware of like the kind of like, and it's cutting between the two.
Yes, and that's the ultimate goal of that part, that particular the story point, as it were, of that whole sequence is to generate intrigue.
Okay.
I find there is something very intriguing about you're watching a character going through a process, but you're not quite sure what the function of it is. But and this is advice for anyone who wants to make a film or story about anything, and you're struggling to come up with something just to make a film about. Process is always entertaining to watch, no matter what it is.
Yeah,
we all love watching a little ball roll through what do they call those Wallace and Gromit machines?
I know exactly
here in post, please. But like even with no story, a process is a story essentially,
and it's so therapeutic about watching. You know, you're especially. I think the payoff is like a good ending, and with that particular scene, I mean, like an ending to that moment, there's a good payoff, because you're like, it's not just like she's poked out a load of bricks and then he's wheeled her up and you're like,
next we're going on in another leg of the journey. Exactly. What would be the point? What would be the point? Only to stretch out the film.
Yeah, and it opens up. It's great. And can I ask as well, something very distinctive about that scene is the music. And again, it's something that like you find out later on in the film, it's playing, it's like an old vinyl on the kind of gramophone thing almost, but it's not. What I loved about it was it works on a couple of levels, because when you watch it at first, I wasn't really aware of the music. I was aware that there was music as they were being lowered down, and it was only when this idea of, oh, is the witch evil, started to occur to me that the music is almost very like, I wouldn't say romantic, but it's got a nice like happy-ish like soothing quality to it. It's not what you would associate with like a witch's lair, like, you know,
evil witch's lair.
You know what I mean, like black and white, like Wizard of Oz kind of as she been. It just sounds like music she's put on to go to sleep to.
Completely.
Was that process, was there a piece of music that you had in mind from the start, or was that just more of a general like, I want something that's not, oh, she's evil, like evil music? Like what was your process for that?
No, that was it exactly. I knew, because I knew what I wanted from the start. I had my golden compass, that I didn't want the audience to at the end be like, that witch is evil. So
she deserved it.
Out of my way to do everything I could to make her just make her appear as literally she's an old woman who just happens to live underground, and she's a bit magic. Essentially, all women, old women living on their own in the Irish countryside. They're all witches, magical beings. She just happens, rent is cheap. Subterranean.
Low price. The tax man can't get you.
Oh, yeah, you can't check you for your TV license underground.
That's true. That is the main tip to come away from this.
Yeah. Though she definitely has the money to pay him off at least. But anyway, so that was completely a part of, and like literally everything in her design is to try and communicate when she is revealed what she actually looks like from behind the curtain, when she's asleep on the wall, is that like, oh wait, she's actually soft and roundy shaped as well. She's dressed in Holy Mary blue.
Okay, so these are all very deliberate choices, because witches are classically much more kind of like sharp
evil,
edges,
pointy, and they got their
skinny,
big sharp noses, and they're green. Yes, indeed. But again,
I never understood how witches were so skinny when all they do is eat children.
I know,
always the classic witch is always super thin.
What are they feeding the kids in the 1800s?
Starving.
I'm telling you.
Like, you're not eating enough.
Bones. That's why they try to fatten them up.
Just to get them going. And I actually,
But
I did not. Oh, sorry, no, continue.
oh yeah, well, I suppose maybe it's just even like a small little thing, because yeah, you asked me like, like, did I have this particular song in mind? No, I just knew the tone that I wanted. I wanted just this like literally as if like Granny has just stuck on the gramophone and she's just going to take a nap.
Take a nap. Yeah, nice.
Exactly. And how I found the song was I found it on Freesound, and it's from like the 1800s. It's a really old song,
wow,
which is great because it's out of copyright.
Yes. That's
absolute
one thing.
Gold dust.
Yeah. I was going to say that is like a beautiful word.
Exactly. Did not have to spend millions trying to. Yeah, exactly. So that was a relief anyway to find, and I getting stumbled on it. Anyway, and the moment I heard it, I was like, "That's
the one.
That's the one." Or like, this works really well for the animatic at least.
Okay. Oh, and you had it in that early. You had it in from the animatic.
I did. Well, because it was very important to me that when I showed the animatic for the first time that I had the sound in it, because yeah, people again we're visual people first, mostly as animators. So we tend to always think like, oh, the visuals, but it can be so easy to forget about just how powerful sound is at communicating. I mean, like, I would almost agree with the difference. I don't know where I heard this, but like, a film experience is almost 60% sound and 40% visuals in a way.
It's so funny. I've heard that a couple of times, and when you hear it at first, you're like, no way. I'm going to see the film.
I had my eyes open the whole time. How come I? Yeah.
But you do learn so much through sound, and I know there's like little kind of exercise you can do where you kind of have your eyes closed. You're watching a film clip, and you're kind of like, especially something maybe you don't know that you're experiencing for the first time. There's so much of the story you can pick up with sound, and I think even on the flip side of that, people will put up with kind of bad picture quality and good sound, but if the sound quality is bad, like it's jumping
ears
or
bleeding.
Something, you're like, it
takes you out of it completely. And I remember the year previous there was a grad film that was done by some of our best animators and best visual designers, but I just remember being so crushed when the sound just wasn't working out. The direction with the sound, I thought, just didn't do it justice, and I felt so
that's so
bad
for them,
because I was like, oh my god, this would have been this was a really nice film, but the sound just killed it for me, and I was like, oh god, this is a tragedy. So I was scared. I was really scared of that going into it. I was like, I need to make sure the sound works. So from the very beginning I was thinking, how can I use sound to communicate? So I had like in my bullet point script, I would like make like notes of like, okay, we're hearing this sound here, and this is what
so you were detailing it that early. And is this for your grad film? Obviously you're kind of working as a team. Is this something that you were kind of like, was someone else in charge of that and you were kind of giving them notes, or were you leading the charge in terms of like, I want these sounds, and then it was kind of like a mixture of Foley and found sounds, that kind of thing?
Yeah, how the kind of team kind of broke down was that and like how things are done in IADT is when you get to fourth year and you're working on your grad film is also when you get to fourth year, you have two options. You can either be a project lead, which essentially be a director, like develop a film, or you can be a specialist, where you focus in on a specific like role that you want to come out and have a really good portfolio for
in that specific role.
Okay,
that's cool.
And then the specialists then work for the films that they like. So there's no voting actually done by lecturers. Like, this film gets made, that film doesn't get made. If you want to make a film, it's on your head, but it's up to you to pitch your film to the specialists, and the specialists kind of decide what gets more manpower.
Really? Oh, wow. Yes, that's a very interesting process.
It's an interesting system. All right. Sorry, it's a bit of a tangent.
No, I love that, because I think a lot of like what I had done in college, and it was film, so it's some similarities, but it was, I think we only made maybe 2 or 3 grad films, but they were pitched and like people voted on them. So no one got to go and say, hey, I'm making this, will you help me?
I'm making this.
Like, I'm going to make it either way, but I would love some help. Otherwise it's going to be me like, hey, what did you, and then, hat on. And,
completely.
But I love that you can make a project, but it's up to you to get these specialists kind of on board.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
But I suppose, and again, it's not a perfect system at all.
No.
I think definitely there was some kind of balance between the two that could benefit everyone entirely. Because I suppose the nice thing about it is that, in one respect, is that we get some pretty cool grad films out of our course that you could easily imagine some lecturers not going for because they're like, no, I don't like the pitch, or nah, that student's a bit of a waste, or
It's tough at the start, isn't it? Because with a
yes.
pitch, there's so little to go on. And I
Oh,
know
yes.
that's the essence of pitching. And people say, oh, boo hoo. Well, that's everyone has that. But
yeah.
sometimes that isn't someone's strength. Exactly like you said with the animation where their visuals were amazing and the sound let them down. Like some people's pitching is terrible. You know, they either have bad public speaking, or they're just not a good communicator in terms of like Acorn, here's the tree. You know, they're just like, oh, it's a guy and he's, you know, and then you're like, you're sitting there listening to them. You're like, oh, you like, explained this to me so well earlier.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Well, and I know what you're trying to say, but you're like, so it's a tough, I know they have limited resources, so it's practical. You know, you can't make every film, but yeah, it's just tough. And can I ask, because you mentioned the animatic, is the animatic something you spent a long time on? Because again, and I'll leave a link to it, I absolutely love on your Vimeo account that you have the full animatic there, and I'm just in awe of how like close to the final production it is, because I've seen a lot of animatics and you know people do them sometimes because they like them. Like I make animatics that aren't necessary because it's really just me making them, and I know I could just go straight into the film, but I like the process of laying it out and kind of going, look, if I can think of a better shot, I'll do it. But for the moment, that's my number one. But for you, when I watch the animatic, it's, you know, it's very, if not like 95% the finished film. Did you spend a long time perfecting that animatic?
No, a very long time indeed. And you know what, actually it's great, it actually ties into what I was even just talking about there, because as I said, like there's no guarantee when you're a project lead that you will have a team. So again, your first pitch when you come back in September in fourth year has to be pretty damn strong, because that's the point where the lecturers are telling the specialists, choose your films now.
Line up behind your
exactly.
So if you don't get people, then they might have all moved to a different project.
Yeah. Although some people pair up early on. They kind of like, I know I work well with you. We've worked on other projects together. We're teaming up from the get-go.
Whatever you're doing, I'm in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Needless to say, I didn't have that anyway. The one guy I did ask, oh, do you want to team up and do a graphic? He was like, no, man, I want to do my own thing. And I was like, oh, okay.
Okay, fair enough.
It is a daunting task. Being like, shit, I'm going to be like the sole person on this. Worst case scenario. So I was like, not only for like, you know, pitching it to the specialists, I was very conscious in the back of my head, like I need to show the lecturers that I know what I'm doing, that I have something solid here, so they'll leave me the alone. Bleep that out if you need to. But like,
no, just so you get a certain amount of breathing room, like a bit of independence. Like, okay, he has a clear idea.
Yeah, exactly. Say, okay, that Liam fella, he might actually pull this off. He's not floundering completely. Because it's a very daunting task. Like, I've never done anything of this scale before. I need to show I've got something really solid here. Literally, I was just trying to prove not only to myself, the specialists, but also the lecturers, like, look, I can do this. Which is a really nerve-wracking thing. And again, what was I saying? It was just trying to get that solid foundation going. So we started halfway through third year. So January of third year, started pre-production. First few weeks was figuring out, okay, which idea do I go with? Eventually, I actually went down a different route. I was developing a film with another girl from my course. But then, because I decided I just need to decide on something.
You need to put your kind of weight behind something, and
exactly. I just need to go in. I need to go down one of these paths, because I was having the same conversation in my head each day.
Oh, and you can
all the different things. Like, oh yeah, you're pretty good. We could do that with you. Oh, you're pretty good. We could do that with you. Then I was like, you know what? I need to just decide. And if I go down a bit this route, that actually might jolt something in me that makes me go, oh no, the other route was the way to go. That's the one to go with.
You have to explore it a little bit to know if it's right or wrong.
You have to venture down a path a small bit before your compass really does like snap into the direction. Like, oh, that's actually the right way. That's due north. There was a big magnetic rock in the way that was blocking you.
I know you're okay.
But yeah, so anyway, then I focused all in on How to Overwitch. Started on my boards and that. Started going through the different versions of it. At the end of third year, I only had half the boards done. I had the story pretty much locked in. The bullet points. The bullet point script. So not even like the main exactly what had happened. But I had like the pretty much a solid enough like thing to build off.
Okay.
Anyway, so I got half the boards done by the end of third year.
And is this kind of like May?
Yeah, oh yeah. That was it.
May.
And
Okay,
then
perfect.
I actually went to Zagreb in Croatia with a few from the college to the festival there. And no, not Annecy. It's the sister festival to Annecy. Is it called Zagreb? No, Anima Fest.
Anima Fest. Okay,
So
cool.
got to go there for a nice little break because our college was being featured like in the festival, like past grad films, like none of our films, but that were going there. But we went there just to represent the college anyway. So that was
Brilliant.
So I had like kind of a month just kind of relax, detox from trying to wrap up our submissions, and then when I came back, then I stayed up in my accommodation near the college, and for the rest of that summer, I was going in and out of the college every day because the college stays open over the summer.
Okay, cool. So you were able to kind of work on it, and
I was able just to work on it, because
get it over the line.
My goal was just when I come back in September, I need to have at least a full pass, start to finish, and I need to have the problems sorted out.
Okay,
because
brilliant.
there were definite problems with certain bits. I was like, I wasn't happy with. I was very happy with the lead up to the bit where she opens the press and finds the wand.
Yes. Okay.
But it was.
But after that,
the climax, I was like, this could go in several different ways, and if I don't do it just right, it's not going to do what I wanted to
okay,
do.
won't do. And that's the fear, isn't it? Is that you'll build up this great story, but just not pay it off right. Where people are left kind of
landing.
Going,
won't stick the landing, and you'll go flying down and you will explode at the end of the runway.
And people are like, "Oh, I like the visuals," and you're like,
but what the fuck happens there at the
what was that story about?
You don't want that's the last thing you want to
So you're kind of building this up for the for the pitch, and then obviously I love the term specialist, by the way. Having to I can't think what specialist is in. Might have been from Battlestar Galactica, actually.
Oh, really?
They call someone a specialist. It's like specialist, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, even if you're just a janitor, you put the name specialist before you.
Specialist.
You're like,
what's it? Sanitary specialist.
Yeah, you're like, I have an area.
There we go. Gold nameplate.
You're like, I'll go for that job.
Yeah, I'll hire that guy.
when you look back now, kind of having, say, spent so much time on the animatic, and now you're at the other side of the film, and you have it made, it's been in festivals. Is there like a favorite part of the animation process that you have? Like, is it the storyboarding, even though that probably is I suppose the biggest knot in terms of the part that you have to unravel? For you, is there a favorite part of the process, like where you see it come together, or is it in those early stages like the animatic?
It's in those early stages. It was the animatic, really and truly. I like that's why I was so happy to hear that you actually watched the animatic on Vimeo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I should post it to YouTube, actually. Maybe someone will actually see it on YouTube. But like because again, I went into this college being like, storyboarding. I'm really interested in storyboarding.
Yeah.
And I always had it in the back of my head, like I really wanted to show like I had the potential to potentially be a storyboard artist to some degree, that there's some bit of potential in me. And I really didn't want someone to look at my storyboards and be like, no, this guy wants to be a storyboard artist. Looks like someone can draw, but wants to be a storyboard artist.
It's always that advice you got from Quasar, where your scores come in and say, don't quit your day job. And you're
that I had that fear throughout
what
all
a terrible
thing. Like, I don't want to come, because I remember one of my lecturers being like, he was just talking to me candidly away, and he was like, yeah, some people just want to do storyboarding then, and you're kind of like, and I was like, I don't want to fall into that category. No.
You're kind of gauging their reaction, like, oh well, who would want to do that?
But again, I suppose like in hindsight, like who cares what the lecturer thought? But like,
I think it's great that you, and I absolutely would encourage you to post it as many places as possible. And I'll leave a link to both the film and the storyboard, because I think for anyone who's interested in animation, like for me particularly, I always love seeing kind of the process of things. And it is so hard sometimes. Stop motion lends itself much more readily to kind of sharing the process, because you're physically making something. You're toiling away, whereas with 2D, whether it's 3D or on a computer, it's in a computer. You don't ever really think I'm going to take a screenshot of this rigging where
potentially this crappier looking version,
because you don't know how it's going to turn out. But I think I love when people share their storyboards, even if they're just snippets, like a scene or something. It really helps. it just helps kind of expand the work that went into it, and you see, okay, this was obviously far pre-planned out in advance. It wasn't just like, yeah, let's have the well shot from there. That looks good.
Why not? Like, yeah, and
Like,
again, it's actually, you know what, it's good to even mention, because when I did come back in September then and did pitch it then, that version that I had there, that first version 1, beginning to end, it did relatively stay the same. I was surprisingly surprised that not a lot of it worked. Like, people were reacting the way I wanted to.
Brilliant. That's quite rare as well, because I feel like sometimes
I was shocked,
especially to have so many ideas, like you know, tributaries that it could have branched into going into it. The fact that you land on that one the first time, I think that's amazing, because when you go down that rabbit hole of, oh, maybe I'll change this, I think you can end up with a nightmare scenario where completely. Like, I'll change it one more time.
That was my fear throughout the whole of that summer, was because I was on my own as well. You kind of have to be on your own for a bit, I find. You just need to get something out of beginning to end, and then you can go back. Because if you show something a bit too early to someone, it's like you're showing someone an incomplete version, and they might be able to give you something about it, but they're not seeing the whole picture.
No, and they can. I think sometimes they can prejudge it. Then that you've almost like, you've kind of like, I like to think of it in terms of like, you've spent your viewing card with them, in terms of like, if you come back to them with the finished thing, they're like, oh, but, and you're like, oh no, that's changed now, but they kind of already have an impression of it.
It's still in their head. They have it in their head,
So you're like, if you need to get them early, that's fine, but get someone else's opinion for the final thing.
I had this, I had this term where I was like, I would call people who hadn't seen the film like, that's a virgin viewer. and then it was only like a year after, I was like, wait, actually, that term is very problematic. I should not have said that term. I'll be cancelled on Twitter for sure.
As long as you weren't keeping a notepad with people's names next to it, and they're like, that Liam Chuck
with a big virgin viewer at the top.
No one wants to work with me.
No, but I wonder why. Maiden, you need to keep your maiden voyages as many as you can.
Just for people who are seeing it for the first time. And I suppose that leads me nicely in, because I know we're kind of winding down now at the moment, just in terms of my kind of advice section. Do you have advice in terms of, because you mentioned some great kind of pointers in terms of like quotes with feedback and stuff like that. Is there an ideal time to kind of get an opinion from someone? Like, do you think the best time is to get a first draft of something together, or do you ever kind of encourage people to sort of, I suppose, have someone they can pitch an idea to, or do you think it's better to have the fully even first draft of something?
I think it's a mixture of both. It's exactly what you just said, because again, I had to verbally pitch the initial concept as well to a few lecturers, because we get a mentor, like a lecturer mentor, and they'll sit down with you and say, tell me what your film is. You've no visuals, you have to just tell out of them, which is can be so painful, especially when the lecturer just sits there really with a really frowny face like the whole time as well when you pitch it. It's like, is he liking this? I don't know. Some of my lecturers are very stony faced, like they're
I'm pitching to a wall here. You're like, okay, I'm not really listening, but go on.
Exactly. Because I always just thought in my head, like they've heard 1,000 of these grad pitches, and they're like, oh, is this just going to be another one?
One of these.
Again, it can be so hard to tell from that initial version, like, is there any potential? But I was lucky enough that my lecturer that I did pitch to, while he was very, very serious, he did actively take notes while I was pitching it. And the version I was pitching to him, very different from the version that the film actually ended up with. Very disparate
but it
style,
was
almost alternate universe in a way. Still similar setting and still similar kind of setup, but kind of
but there was enough there that there was an interest. You know what I mean? Maybe it was a different approaching point, but
from things he said then, from his reaction then to like different bits from that old version of the idea, then helped click together the points, the events that I had experienced all those years previous.
Okay, brilliant.
That then clicked in the final version of the film, where it's about these kids robbing the witch at the bottom of the well, and it's about like the vulnerability of the elderly. But that only came out because he said something about one of my pitches. Because I think in one of those early versions I did pitch, it was about it was about these two kids in the famine who were starving, and they were good kids. Like they were just hungry, so they decided to steal from this well. But then one of the kids gets snatched away by the creature in the well. So very different film, obviously. Very different from this version. One of the kids gets snatched away, and then so my story was about kind of how the sister then has to go. The sister was the eldest in this version. How she has to go down, and she's going down to like into this well, into like this underworld, really, this like Irish folklore underworld, and she had to like
that is like very
different completely, but similar setup ish, but like it was this idea that she had to find this creature in the well anyway that had taken her brother, as like he thought it was like, oh, it's a tribute, this kid is coming down to my well, great. And the whole point of the film was about her outsmarting the creature, because I love that about Irish folklore, is that a lot of these stories are about trying to, how do you outsmart this creature that works off very different logic to how we work. So it was about her, like, because she had the bag of coins that the brother had stolen. So she gives him back the bag of coins, and then she gets the brother back, and they make out of there. But then the creature realizes when he picks up the bag and shakes it, it's like, what the heck? This isn't coins. And he opens it then and he realizes it's only rocks. And she's actually hidden the coins away.
Oh, brilliant.
And then they escape off. They chop down the roof of the well and then seal away the creature. That was the original version I pitched to my mentor. But I remember him saying, because I told him, I was like, I really want to do like this. I really want the entertainment bit to be like how she outsmarts him. And he was like, I remember him saying like, why doesn't she just bash him over the head? And then like that stuck with me then, and then that suddenly clicked everything together to like, what if these kids are the villains, or the real villains, and they're going in and so bashing over the head, and the witch and my grandmother, everything just went bah.
Yeah.
And then, that's what got me to there. But yes,
that's what led to that.
To answer your question in the most long-winded way possible, they don't call me long-winded Liam for nothing.
It's a good nickname. That's my stage name.
That's my stage name. Yeah. Can I get that in lights? Can I get that in lights in the background? But like that's what that's like. Oh, what was the question again? Damn it! This is what happens.
I was for just, I suppose the God, I've even forgotten now. Hang on.
I know this. I'm so sorry.
No. Jeez, because for someone, to pitch to.
That's right.
Getting ideas.
If I didn't pitch it from there, that probably, and if I just went straight into it, that's probably the film that would have been made. But it was just so interesting getting that one word from my mentor, like really just clicked something else in my head. Very disparate. He didn't expect
led you down a different path.
Like he didn't tell me you should do this and do this and do this.
It was just his reaction.
It was just his reaction, and
that's important at the start to get people.
That's what I find at the start. When you're pitching, it's not so much about you pitching to the other person; it's about you listening to yourself while you're saying it out. Because I find you can internalize in your head an idea for so long and you'll never solve it. But as soon as you try to explain it to a person, or I think in product design, one of my friends heard this from a product design student in LIT in Limerick, that they have this technique where they call it talk to the rubber duck. You just get a rubber ducky and you put it on your desk or whatever you want, and you just tell you pitch your product to it. And there's something about the way our brains have to process what we're thinking,
it to another person,
and put it into words that we actually say out of our mouths. We think about things differently, and you'll be surprised. You'll be saying something, and then you go like, "That's it." I've been thinking about this for months. I think that's a great piece of advice. Yeah, but it's only now that I've actually said that out loud, and I've heard myself saying it out loud
that it's kind of clicked.
That now I've realized how stupid that thing was, or that isn't the way to go. That's the way to go.
That's the way to go. Okay.
No, that's great. To finish on that point, when it comes to, so I do definitely think it is good to verbalize your initial ideas, because you will think about things differently. Have a select council of few to do it with.
And the council has been convened. Yeah,
the council has been convened, exactly. Like I'm very lucky that me mammy is an artist as well, so she definitely understands the process of
she has a good kind of visual eye,
and she has a good head for like what she thinks works and what doesn't work. But I find she's been tormented by me being like, I have this idea and I just need to use you as a rubber duck for a bit. So have your council of few. It's well worth talking through. But then yes, I think the next step then is that once you've figured out, okay, this is kind of the main bullet point structure of the script, I should just go and try and flesh out a version one of this whole thing then.
Okay, get the full thing done. show
Yeah,
to someone.
or thereabouts even.
Yeah. But I suppose that
Depends.
initial acorn, but then try a first pass at it, even if it's very
Exactly.
rough before you. Okay, no, that's
Completely,
brilliant.
because what you're really trying to find out when you are showing someone a whole thing or a sequence is you're trying to figure out are my setups and payoffs actually paying off?
Okay.
That's the way I
No,
always try to think.
I think, gee, there's so much in there, honestly, that great in terms of advice, just based on your experience, but I think that are very applicable to, to a lot of mediums and a lot of people coming up with ideas.
Yeah, yeah,
So
actually,
no,
and
thanks.
I have learned equally so much about design, not just from animators and filmmakers, but from, like, as I said, I was like product designers. Like, we're all like
Creatives.
the creative process is very universal in many ways. And the two books I've read about ideas are like literally one of them is called A Technique for Coming Up with Good Ideas.
Okay.
What a title, huh?
Yeah, because it's very clinical, but that's exactly what it's
Exactly.
about. Yeah.
And you know what? Probably makes sense because the book is written by someone who works in the advertising industry.
Okay, cool.
And the other book I read was by John Cleese, wasn't? He's the
Oh
actor for,
well, yeah,
Fawlty Towers,
yeah. Monty Python.
and Monty Python, of course. So again, that's some acting and writing. Again, writing again, so it's
But all
similar,
these different perspectives on it.
but different perspectives. And you know what's actually interesting? Both of those books are really short. I find that a really interesting like concept, and the fact that these two books that are about creativity and ideas are two of the shortest books I've ever
Shorter
read.
books, yeah.
You read them
God,
in an
well,
hour.
I'm already hooked. I like a short book. I'm not a great
Completely
reader, so when I hear
get
something
to the
short,
point.
yeah,
Exactly. That's why I love short films too. Sometimes they just get to the point.
they just go straight to it. And can I ask, just oh, sorry, no, sorry.
Oh yeah. And, I'm trying to remember what my point was by mentioning those two books. Was the
I think we
oh
were
yeah,
saying,
but like yeah, I learned so much like from like different industries, obviously, from that. But yeah, those two books they probably maybe just I don't know where this will fit maybe into the podcast.
no, no, no,
A
no
little
worries.
bit about good advice, but two pieces of advice I really picked up from those two books I mentioned about the ideas is that they both try to define like what is an idea, and I really like their definition of an idea is can often be simplified down as to a connection between two often very disparate things.
Okay,
And from my experience, I can always kind of break down all my ideas into some form of connection. As
between two things.
between two
Okay,
things,
that's a
like I
cool.
said, the kids robbing the coins and my granddad's coppers and my nana being vulnerable in the countryside,
And this all kind of
all
amalgamated
kind of
into the
calculated,
short.
but I can literally tie the points between them. I find ideas are very much like puns in a way, and people roll their eyes and go, "Oh, geez, this guy's a
Yeah,
pun guy," you see.
where's he
Um,
go?
but I find puns are almost like the very like embodiment of an idea. It's taking often two very different things, like the word itself, maybe a word hidden inside that word that has a very different meaning, but then
Okay,
tying them
but
together.
tying them together. Okay, that's very
Yeah,
interesting. No,
uh,
honestly, there's so
yeah,
much in
oh,
there. And I just wanted to, just on the subject of advice, because I know, and congrats, I know How to Rob a Witch done very well on the kind of the film festival circuit. And I just wonder, is there any, not even necessarily advice, but from your experience, was there anything that you learned maybe kind of going forward for your next one? Like, are you kind of, is your approach throw it into as many as possible? Because I know film festivals can be a bit of a
oh
money pit, especially
yes,
when you don't have a budget, when you're working off, whether it's a college thing or like a low budget, just trying to find your creative mark and make up a body of work. Is there anything that you found, like either great film festivals that you'd recommend, or even just advice in general you had for when it came to applying?
oh I to be honest with you, like film festivals mystify me just as much as everyone else.
Yeah.
They're
Okay.
such fickle beasts. Like there's some
Yeah.
that you look at on film fair and like, you know what? I think my film will fit this one just right. It's just
Just
like their
right.
taste, just like with the trade,
Yeah.
you'll get the rejection.
There's nothing cruel. Do you use Film Freeway?
Yeah, I used Film Freeway and what's the other one? There's like an animation one specifically. If I have it bookmarked up here, do I still?
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
maybe not. I don't know. You'll find
It's
it
so funny
anyway.
though. There's nothing
Animation
worse.
Festival. It's probably called Animation Festival.
I must look
I don't
that
know.
up. I didn't know there was
Um,
a specific animation one. There's nothing
yeah,
crueler than that.
I believe it was anyway.
That Film Freeway email notification. They always do it on my.
Mm.
I have a Hotmail account, and it's always so cruel because it's like
Oh,
status has changed on your film,
yes.
but it
Status
never
is.
tells
Oh,
until you click into it,
click
and then
into
you
it and
just
then
see
you go.
that little
Oh.
line, it's like not selected.
Not selected.
You're like,
and you're like, there goes at work, probably, if you really splurge €20 down the drain,
it's
and
funny.
you don't even know, did they watch your bloody film?
Yeah.
I'd be like... seriously, if anyone wants to, like set up a scam, just set up a fake film festival, set your charges really high, claim that your festival has gotten lots of prestigious things before, and honestly, the government will never find you.
Yeah, you're just like, you do worry. So I have to say, I haven't had the I haven't had the cojones to apply for a film festival that's been like plus 20 quid. Some of them are like 45, and you're like, what
else could you do with that money? You can buy yourself a lot of art supplies. I could buy my art supplies for a year with that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You're like,
or fine liners and markers.
At least 4 Burger King meals.
Exactly. But
it's just tough to justify.
Yeah, I think all day. Yeah,
it's kind of a niche thing, and I'm hoping to put together a list, and I will kind of I suppose avail of all the guests that I've had on this podcast, maybe there's always some niche ones that you stumble upon, and I think there's some ones that are some that are free, and sometimes that are very low budget that are great because they're kind of, they might be niche films, like they might have a particular theme, or maybe they're geared towards like 1 minute shorts or something. But I'm hoping to put together a list, because I think sometimes you just stumble upon these and you're like, how did I not know about it? But there's so many film festivals out there.
Completely. I actually did something similar because the short I made in third year, while also having to work on our pre-production for Which it's just one of our briefs in third year is to make 30 seconds worth of animation. But some people take it as an opportunity to make a 1 minute short or something.
Yeah, okay.
And I did it with the goal of trying to submit to a 1 minute festival. But the short I made there, Morning Murder, I haven't actually released it online yet because, again, damn festivals, some of them say you can't have it online.
There is that unfortunate where you're like, you just want to get it out there and show it to people, and you're
which
like,
I think is is daft. I think on the side tangent here, I think the pandemic has really shown just how daft it is. Like, all these festivals then went online, and it's like, why should you have the
privilege of showing
publishing rights to my film on your website for like a weekend, when I could just release it on YouTube and I can easily get maybe 25 views a day?
It's the same.
Make those people's lives even better. Well, even better. What I mean is I could enlighten someone's day or spark joy.
It's true. And I do think a lot of film festivals, maybe the bigger ones will stay with that premier thing, but a lot of the smaller ones, I've noticed, they are opening up where you don't have to have an exclusive. Like, it's like you can have it online, because I think they know, especially at kind of the beginning level, you're not making money off this, you're making it to release it to people. And if you have to hide it away for a year, you're kind of like, it is a bit of a dampener. You're like, and
exactly,
you're just like,
and because
show it to people.
And you know what, that's another film festivals get more stupid the more I think about them, because the worst thing is you'll go to a film festival, these festivals that are meant to celebrate these films, and you'll go and you'll see some amazing stuff, and you'll come back and people are like, how was the festival? Like, it was great, I saw all these amazing shorts, and I can't link you to them because they're not online for another 5 years, perhaps. I don't know.
Like, even case in point, when I approached you about going on this podcast, I'd actually seen Morning Murder, part of the Dublin Animation Film Festival. I think it was either last year, it must have been, when they done it online. I think it was,
and
it's so funny because I had no recollection that was you, because
I had actually submitted that film. It's funny because I submitted my grad film to DAF when I graduated, I got it finished, and then the film I did in third year, Morning Murder, I submitted the year after because I just had it in the back pocket. Like, why not? Might as well.
Wait a second, what's this guy doing?
I forgot about this. And I have neglected to release it online because it still is in some submissions, and you don't want to run the risk sometimes of losing out.
I think when you put that and you've put it in, you have to just have a bit of patience.
So I was going to wait until they all like petered out.
Oh no, that's completely fair.
Even what was I talking about there originally was that there was this 1 minute short festival I found out in Bulgaria. What's it called? Golden Cooker, I think is what it's called.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen that one. Yeah,
they have a 1 minute category, and I actually this sounds like a humble brag now, but Morning Murder won it last year.
I saw that on the.
I can't even remember if I posted about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's under your menu.
Yes, I would have added the laurel.
Yes, so congrats.
Yes. No, thank you. But like when I saw from the third years this year, their 1 minute shorts, I was blown away by the quality. I was like, oh my god! I messaged them immediately, like, here's all the 1 minute film festivals that I've submitted to. Definitely submit your stuff. Your stuff is like well capable of doing it. And I think actually one of them won Golden Cooker this year.
Wow, okay. They have a very strong Irish contingency.
Yeah, the Bulgarians love us. But yeah, no, a list, like, it's, again, our community is really strong. Really.
Yeah, and I think there's a nice, like, just before, because I know we're running low on time, just before we wrap up.
Yes.
No, absolutely. It's one of those things you can, like, you come in here with a couple of questions and all of a sudden, like, you just go off on tangents, which is nice, because that's where the conversation leads. But exactly. I think there is a really nice community of kind of, like, you know, sharing information, especially when it comes to animation. All the things I've noticed is that people are very free with their time, very generous with their advice. There isn't this closed, like, oh no, I'm not telling you how I make that because you'll copy me and then I'll be out of the job. And just in terms of, like, and I really like that you're saying about, you know, you're reaching out to people and giving advice on film festivals and stuff. Just while we're wrapping up, is there a particular place that people can get in touch with you? Like, is there a particular medium you use? I know you're saying you're on YouTube and Vimeo, but is there anywhere else people can get in touch with you?
Yes, I am on Instagram at Cardigan Coot. That's cardigan, the clothes, and then space, and then coot is in the bird. Okay. I love cardigans. I'm wearing one right now. Such a versatile piece of clothing. But
and I'll leave a link to that.
Thank you. Yes,
I'll leave a link to all them in the description.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter with the same handle as well, but I'm not very good at Twitter. I haven't figured it out.
Okay, yeah, it's one of those projects I'll get to.
Yeah, I'm working on it. But Instagram is where I will post whenever I get. Again, similar to how you said you wanted to approach releasing the podcast, as in, like, you work a bit and then you'll release. Then I've been doing the same for the past year. I've been doing, like, because it's bookending this thing perfectly. Because this is the 25th anniversary of Pokemon, I've spent the whole last year doing nothing but Pokemon Black and White. Inktober.
I've seen that on your Instagram. They're amazing.
Started as just a small thing. It's like, I'll just do this for Inktober, and then it just kept going. It was my pandemic comfort project in a way.
Brilliant. They're so important. You know, just to keep yourself active creatively. Absolutely.
Exactly. And it was like, it really did remind me, like, because I only did my favorite designs, and I felt it was really inspiring going back, being like, these designs had such an influence on me and inspired me to pursue design. I really wanted to almost pay tribute to them in a way, and to actually study them and actually really just give them my all and see, can I come up with a really nice compositions and hopefully be able to sell them and make some money back on all the damn film festivals I've seen to actually make some money back. Just to
bring me back out of the red.
Yeah, you know what? That gets me so much is that a film can take so much time, effort, concentration, and ambition, passion, and people and teamwork. But at the end of the day, you'll probably end up losing money unless you win a festival that actually has a cash prize.
They are few and far between. Yeah.
But I literally have made more profits off selling a sticker than I have in making any of my films, which is really funny. So films are the ultimate passion project. I think for that. You're not doing it for the money. You're just doing it for the pure love of
the passion, the love of it. And that's a great note to end on. Liam, I just want to thank you so much. I'll leave a link to all your different channels that if people want to get in touch, and just thank you so much for your time today.
Oh no, thank you so much. This has been a blast, and hopefully we'll get to actually meet up.
Absolutely. We live like 10 minutes away. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sure, I'll call him now. We'll get the tea. I'm parched.
It was lovely talking to you, man. So that's it for this episode of Cartoon Cosmonauts. I'd like to say a huge thank you to my guest Liam Fahy for coming onto the show and talking about his short How to Rob a Witch. You can find the full short on YouTube, and I highly also recommend watching the Animatic too. If you'd like to get in touch with Liam, you can contact him via Instagram, where he is known as Cardigan Coot, all of which I'll leave links to below. Liam would also like to give a huge thank you to everyone who helped make the film. Their names and links to their Instagrams and Twitter will also be included below. If you'd like to get in touch with me, perhaps with some questions, feedback, or even to discuss your own short on the show, then you can find me online as Speak Broccoli on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Just look for the green broccoli logo. You can also email speakbroccoli@gmail.com. I've been your host, Joseph Orr, and you've been listening to the cosmic sounds of Cartoon Cosmonauts.